All right, everybody, welcome to the September 20th meeting of the Town of Hadley Select Board, and I believe the Finance Committee is continuing their meeting from from yesterday. Okay. So first order of business is the consent agenda. Tonight we have a few items. We have the minutes from August 9th and September 3rd. August 9th.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. We have warrants for payables 1810, 1811S and 1811, as well as payroll 1809, 1810, and 1811. We have two one-day liquor license requests, both from the top of the campus. The first one for McGurk Stadium on October 8th, which is for their tailgate tent. And then the second one is for the Mullins Center for October 7th and 8th. How is that a one-day liquor license? Are those two one-day liquor licenses?
There's a total of 3 for top of campus. It's October 7th and 8th, same event, different days.
Different days, okay.
Yes.
For the arena floor, and that is the ADA Historic Deerfield Antique Show. And then finally, we have a Council on Aging resignation from Elsie Wiskevitz, effective September 20th, 2017.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Second.
Just one question. Has anybody seen the minutes? I haven't got a copy. And she said she didn't have them.
They are loaded onto board docs, but I did not get them loaded on until about 3:45 this afternoon.
Okay, so you haven't had a chance to look at them?
No, I haven't looked at them at all.
Then why don't we hold on approving the minutes then until everyone's had a chance to review them? Okay, thanks, Donald. I didn't realize that. So, okay, so your friendly amendment to your motion?
Friendly amendment would be to leave the minutes off and to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Except for Council on Aging.
Okay. And I think it's safe to say on behalf of the Select Board and all of the folks here in Hadley who've benefited from the good work Elsie's done over the years, so I very much appreciate time well spent serving your town.
You're here.
Okay, we do have time for a public comment period. Is anyone here for public comment this evening? David?
So at the last meeting, we were posed a question about the Town of Amherst sewer right-of-way on the Hadley property. I had an opportunity to research that question and receive the maps from the Town of Amherst, as well as talk to the DPW director over there, Bill McMorrin. And the Hadley property is unaffected by the sewer easement from the Town of Amherst. Also reviewed the deed for the property, and there was no recorded easement there, so we're fine for that property.
Okay. All right, is everybody clear on that then?
I think that it goes down here.
Can I comment on last night's meeting I attended shortly?
I'm sorry?
No, I want to make a comment on a different subject matter.
Is it going to be more pertinent when we get to the...
No, it's the meeting I attended last night about revenues and things and what we're doing and what they said about us, you know. It was a regional selectman meeting at Union Station, and the main speaker spoke about OPEB. And he was astonished that what we're doing, and he says what Hadley's doing is amazing, because most of the cities and towns are doing nothing.
How come when I tell you that you don't listen to me?
No, I do, but you know, there's so many towns that aren't doing anything.
Anything at all.
He's from the Plymouth Trust, and actually he was there trying to enhance people to join his trust. But, you know, additional fees and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, he was amazed, like I said, that the effort we're putting forth in Hadley and today's Springfield Union said there was an article in there, Standard & Poor's, they're really going to go after now the bond ratings because of that.
Oh, really?
They're going to start more, so,
Oh, I didn't see that.
you know.
That's in on Mass Life today?
No, yeah, it was in the Springfield Republican this morning.
Okay.
There was an article on it, so we're in pretty good shape to protect our AA rating plus, you know, so which is good.
AA plus.
Yeah.
Could I add?
Thanks, Donald. Sure.
Actually, because just today, we got a letter from Parker Elmore, who does our reporting on the OPEB, and he's asked if we actually had a policy on making the contributions, and we do. He asked if there was a formal policy to increase the contributions to the trust by 2.5% per year, which is the policy that we agreed on, I think, 3 years ago and have stuck with ever since. And he says, I know it seems modest, but it impacts the calculation of the discount rate, so let us know. I was really happy to be able to write back and say, yes, we do. And David came up with a policy that we have in the budget book, and to send it to him and say we're right on target for, for funding that again. And I gave him the amount we were funding it at this year. So it's not just the fact of making contributions; it's the fact that there is a plan that we are following. That means that is really helping us on the other end of when we're going to need these monies, and it's not going to be drowning out the rest of our budget the way it could be. I think these other towns are at risk for not making more of an effort, but I think I'm very, very glad that we are. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so anything else for public comment? If not, we'll move into our appointment. I don't see a timestamp on the appointment, so are we okay to just go ahead? So I think the folks are here.
Timestamp was for Sunday on the public hearing notice that was published in the paper. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we need to wait then, in case someone shows up? Okay. So, well, we're gonna get into this special town meeting warrant. It's gonna take a while. Shouldn't. It shouldn't? Joyce says it shouldn't. All right. Well, why don't we just start there?
Why don't you do David's administrative
Well, that's what
report?
I was going to, and then you said.
Oh, I thought you tried
She
to.
ran the last couple of meetings, shouldn't she?
I know, well, this is why I was supposed to wait.
All right, who's the chairman tonight?
I'm confused.
When I was, Gary
All
was
right.
helping me.
So David, if there are some highlights, do you want to?
There are a couple, let me just touch upon them. But, as we have been since the beginning of summer, it's been all town meeting all the time. At this point, we're down to the deadline for the selectmen to take action tonight, and we need to post the warrant tomorrow. Monday, the capital planning committee met and made their recommendations on all the articles that they could cover. Last night, the finance committee met and made their recommendations on all the financial articles. And they have come with a plan for moving forward with balancing the FY18 budget. With respect to the other issues that we've been working with, the HVAC system and the locker system over at the public safety complex are now completed. On Monday, the CPA approved funding for the Zaturka Park reconstruction phase 3. So now that goes to the town meeting for approval. If they get their approval, we'll go out to bid to get that going. I did receive from Chief Spanknable a copy of the RFP for the ambulance. I looked it over. I think that there's just some minor changes that need to be made basically to the insurance provisions, and that can go out the door. So that'll be out the door on Friday. Sewer clarifier update. There were 2 changes in the scope of work that were ordered based upon conditions at the site. There's electrical code compliance is needed to get done right away. That's going to be funded through the enterprise fund. And then there's some additional work having to do with bolts that need to be modified on the old weir attachments. That will result in a change order, which will be presented to the board. That will be for small money.
I'm assuming there's contingent built into that clarifier project?
Yes, there is.
Why don't we utilize that money before we take it out of the enterprise account?
Because the contingency is not enough to cover the electrical. So
Can we use as much possible? It's only 10 grand, right?
it's only 10 grand, but that's your contingency.
So if anything else went wrong?
Yeah, we know that we already have a...
Can the money that's being utilized be put back into the enterprise account if the contingency is not used?
It would stay within the sewer impact fee account. so it would not be used in the enterprise account.
So we won't lose the money, but
So what I can do is, we can review this and see if it's agreeable for the bulk of the electrical to come forward, to come out of the contingency account.
I would be happier doing it that way, and if you have to wait, how close are we to the end of the project?
It should be wrapped up at the end of next month.
So you're only halfway through it now. They're completing one right now.
Wouldn't you rather take it out of the contingency rather than out of the enterprise?
Jerry, there's been a bunch of problems with the first one. They just had a meeting 2 days ago, I believe, with everyone, the engineers, the contractors and that. And hopefully we won't have these problems
Okay.
for the second half of this project, but we don't know yet.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
On the Connecticut River Levee subsurface survey, we're now beginning the process of drilling in order to find out what's below the soil, to find out the condition of the dike below what we can see. Notifications have gone out to abutters of property for the rail trail, which is part of the levee system. And so you may get some notices from people or some inquiries from people. But we're just proceeding with work as according to plan, and we just wanted people to be aware of that. There's been work with DCR about traffic control on the rail trail while they're doing their work there. And we've been in touch with Andy Morris Freeman, who is our representative to the Norwotic Rail Trail, so that he understands that we have work that needs to get done there.
What does the rail trail have to do with the dike?
The dike goes from the elementary school about a mile to the middle of the Great Meadows, then directly south along Cross Path Road, where it connects up with the old railway embankment. That old railway embankment is in effect
Okay, thank you.
the southern part of your dike. And that's about it, except that we have a fashion show to Hopkins Academy this Saturday,
Tickets available here if you'd like.
15 now and 20 at the door.
That's right, and it's worth going to.
I heard David was going to participate as well.
I'm being, as I say, dressed in drag. Full velvet dress.
excellent.
Voter registration deadline for the October 5th town meeting is September 25th, so if you haven't registered, do so by Tuesday. I think that's coming up, Monday coming up. Public forum on the October 5th town meeting is September 27th, special town meeting on October 5th, and the special town election ballot votes on the spending November 14th.
Okay, any questions for David?
Should we vote on the town meeting warrant now? Or is that someplace else in the
I
I
schedule?
think we're gonna go through it next.
Yeah, I think the most responsible thing would be to go through it
I take the vote.
and take the vote.
You, that 220,000 for that Woody Bridge Road you mentioned
Yeah.
last week,
Yep, the fine.
is that gonna be done by this year or?
I would imagine, given how slowly the federal government is working these days, that by the time you get the contract, it will probably be beyond the pavement season. So probably have to wait till Easter or whenever the plants open up again.
And they're still on target for the Bay Road Bridge, huh? End of the month,
Still on
maybe?
target for the Bay Road Bridge. Weather conditions permitting, and we do have hurricanes out there that you never know with a hurricane.
Okay, so then, yeah, I'm sorry that we have to make you folks wait until, but it was posted for, so just in case anybody comes. So we'll go ahead into the special town meeting warrant then. So, David, would you like to, I know you gave a little bit of a preamble, but just let it, well,
Yeah.
where we last left off, if anybody has been watching all of our meetings, there was a proposal in front of the Select Board and the Finance Committee at our last meeting that was talking about the possibility of a contingent override for October 5th. And I think there was a fair amount of, I'll just use the word angst about that, how that would work. The contents, I don't think that there was unanimity of opinion on whether or not that was the best way to proceed going forward. So I think at the last meeting this was discussed, we all kind of respectfully agreed to disagree and go back and ponder all of this and try to figure out what was in the town of Hadley's best interest going into the October 5th town meeting. So just with that as a backdrop, since that time, the Finance Committee left that meeting and decided to go back to the table and take a look. And then David also was working with some members of the town financial team to take another look. And so there's been a flurry of activity and a lot of hard work and thought that has been put into a revision to that plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you for that introduction. We have indeed revised the plan. The plan that I submitted last week, in my estimation, was a plan that carried us forward to the future, that it provided funding for the fire department at the appropriate level, and put us in a very good position for OPEB, and put us in a good position for FY19. As you said, the chair, that didn't seem to suit, and so going back into the numbers again, we had to come up with another plan, which would be a compromise plan. And it's in the nature of compromises that the further you get into the compromise, you have less sound financial decisions to make, and you have less sound managerial decisions to make. And so when I summarize this plan, you may find yourself raising objections, and that's just inherent in what we're proposing here as a compromise. The first thing is to just define how big the shortfall in the budget is. If you looked at the draft number 7, Article 1 shortfall, we were looking at a contingent appropriation of $270,000. Taking a look at what we were asking for the firefighters, we were asking for funding for 4 positions at 12 months rather than 3 positions at 6 months. So recalculating that, recalculating the firefighter ask for FY18, that shortfall went from 270,000 down to 136,000. So that's the size of the problem that needed to be addressed. We proposed the following. 1, that the select board and the finance committee give up their stipends. That takes $7,000 off the budget. 2, that the Park and Rec Commission and the assessors also voluntarily give up their stipends. Call that $8,000 savings there. That we reduce the reserve fund from 50,000 down to 40,000. That gives you 10,000 towards this problem. By repositioning some of our debt, we were able to knock off $10,000 from the bond anticipatory note. We fund OPEB and restore funding for OPEB at the full level that we proposed in order to stay on track towards managing this unfunded liability. We proposed that we take $50,000 to restore OPEB funding, not out of free cash as we had originally proposed, but out of the general stabilization account. This is a one-time expense, so it makes sense to use stabilization for one-time expenses. Use of $5,000 to $7,000 out of free cash not needed for the capital in order to balance the budget. Use of $19,000 out of the general stabilization account to fund an unfunded liability within our pension. We have an early retirement. This is long before I came on board, an early retirement. And there's an unfunded liability annually of $19,000 within our pension assessment. That should be going away in the next few years. The DPW was able to throw in $742. The town administrator kicked in his expense account of $500. The Council on Aging, because they have some gaps in their hiring, and because they can rely upon state grants to fund some of their new hires when they come on board, and because they can rely upon the support of the Friends of the Council on Aging, have donated $10,000 to reducing this budget shortfall. The treasurer does not need as much money for the tax titles as she normally does. There's only 3 that have been sent up from the collector's office, and so she is offering $1,500 to reduce the shortfall. That leaves us approximately $12,000 left to go, which, if we're going to provide these firefighters, we can raise additional revenue through the fire department receipts for inspections and plan review. So that closes the budget gap. One other thing to say is that this preserves funding of free cash for the capital program. So that still is available for capital.
Okay. So basically then what we're proposing is taking action to balance the budget, taking these actions, and then we are not going forward with a contingent or a direct override request at the fall town meeting.
That's correct.
Right?
Or we could utilize this as Plan B and go forward on town meeting floor and utilize what was just proposed here as a Plan B.
I'm not seeing that. How does that work?
If it fails on town meeting floor, then this would be Plan B.
I see, so that you would present 2 omnibus budgets. One's a contingent appropriation, and then the other one is a Plan B appropriation within the levy.
We will need votes for the stabilization, for the 70,000 coming out of stabilization. Other than that, we don't need votes on anything else that's there. Correct?
You need a 2/3 majority vote to pass either, for
Stabilization withdrawals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this was the proposal that was worked out last night at the Finance Committee,
That's correct.
because I wasn't there, so I guess I just want a little background how that came about.
Do you want it from the finance committee, Doug?
Or whoever
Sure.
was there, I wasn't there, I had another meeting to attend, so
Well,
just how it worked out.
We just felt that we needed some time to go back to all the boards and all the departments. And time is of the essence right now. So, but we're going to need some time to make sure we're spending the taxpayers' money wisely, that we can confidently say that where their money is going, we've checked over everything. And yes, this is just the Band-Aid at this point. Next year, we have everything to look at, and we will probably be looking at some type of an override to do that. We need to make sure that we're confident in going to the taxpayers, that we know that we've spent their money as wisely as we can. We need to prove that that this is what we need. If you want the services that you're accustomed to, we will need some type of an override. So at this point, we felt like this is what we could do to make our town safe, because we were definitely fixed on making sure the town was safe and that we had enough firefighters for that. But other than that, now we need to make sure that we have dotted all our I's, crossed our T's, and that we are confident when we are going to the taxpayer for an override.
Right, we want to have a nice solid plan for an override. We don't want to be like, oh, we have this immediate problem, so we're going to fix it with this immediate override, and then everything else that we discussed is still in the lurch. If we have a much better plan for an override, I think it'd be a lot easier to present it to the people and get their buy-in on it.
I certainly don't mind giving up my stipend. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't see anything here from the school department, and they're one of our biggest.
Well, their
biggest
budget's
budget.
already voted on, so we can't touch it.
Yeah, once town meeting gavel falls, you can't.
We can touch it for 19, but we can't
Yeah,
touch it for 18.
But they couldn't offer anything.
Well,
They
they weren't.
The option was made, but nothing was forthcoming.
We're working on a payment of about $15,000, but the details still need to be worked out.
100% of the select board could claim, 100% of the finance committee, 100% of the assessors, which is not much, not a lot of money at all.
Well, so
This
we've
is
got-
not gonna fix the problem down the road.
No.
Well, no, we just said that it wasn't gonna fix the problem down the road. It fixes the
50% of the
pro-
Park and Rec Commission.
So the argument every time we come with a cut is, well, this is just a little bit, it's not enough to do anything. We add all those cuts up together and it's enough to do something. So I reject that argument.
Can I add to what Amy said too, and Amy, if you don't mind, I want to throw something else in.
Sure.
I wasn't at your meeting a couple of weeks back, but you invited in Sandy Pooler and Bill Keegan. And you remember Bill Keegan was one of the two fellows that came in last fall to see us. So I went back just to, I think a lot of it was a bit of a repeat.
Sure.
But then there was some additional information than what they had discussed with us. And I think one of the, some of the feedback that I received after the last meeting, and also what I heard here at the table that night, was a lot of concern about an override, and some element of the population, it's extremely difficult for them. So I had subsequent conversation with Sue Blawatsky, the tax collector, and I know that Dan Zadanek and you, David, were also talking. Again, in the spirit of trying to do this once and do it right, I think we also really need to be looking at that revenue side of it. And, you know, Sandy Pooler and people like that have a lot of experience with these things, and there are some, I'm not going to call them tricks because that sounds like so you're doing something inappropriate, but there are pieces to the puzzle that should really be looked at holistically. For example, I'm just going to say it out loud again, you know, we have always said we should only have a single tax rate here in Hadley. There were some interesting points that were brought up that night. And, you know, things always have to be done in the context of a particular situation. So I think it's actually worth going back, if we're really talking about a future override, that, bless you, or whatever. Okay. But looking at that split tax rate at the same time you're doing an override actually has far more merit than in the past. We've only just talked about a split tax rate. And then I was ignorant on the fact that there are some provisions where you can create, I don't know if special classes is the right word. Exemptions, going back to the point, John, you were making, that we really need to look at the folks who are struggling to make ends meet. And I'd like to see us do that at the same time that we're talking about an override as well. So, you know, you know, a week or two ago, I would have been pushing forward with this contingent override, but I think letting the dust settle and having more time to think about it, for those reasons, I'd be in favor of holding on the override now, and again, trying to really have a more focused conversation and bringing all of those factors into play as early as the spring.
If you ask for an override now, then you pretty much cancel yourself out from being able to do this holistic override later. Right? You can't go every town meeting with an override.
No, but my problem with this is that you're taking $70,000 out of the stabilization fund and you're initiating your fire department changes. If next year, you know, that's needs to go for an override and that doesn't pass next year, how do you continue the fire department?
Well, we're gonna go look at the entire budget again. So one of the things that the finance committee has discussed is having all the department heads come to the finance committee before they come to the select board, so that we can be sure that every line item is where it needs to be, and so that we can rearrange the budget so that we can fund the fire department even in the absence of an override. But we have many other problems. We have HR that we need to worry about. We have IT that we need to worry about. Lots of things that need to be looked at, and so I would much rather hold off on an override now and come up with a holistic plan for the next town meeting.
And I think we have in the works also, listening to the COG last week, that, you know, maybe there's something there for HR and for IT, so.
Some type of savings.
Some type of savings, so I mean, hopefully that might come to fruition.
Well, one of the reasons that we continued our meeting into today was that we were sort of unclear what's happening with the COG, because when they were in here, it seemed like, you know, everything was rosy and sunshine, but all the rumors are that they're insolvent, and yet there was no mention of that while they were here. And so I would like to see,
Subsequent to the sales pitch that we heard last week, many of the things have been touted as not being extremely true in the way they were presented.
right,
to
so
us.
instead of going this town meeting and asking the people if they want to keep or get rid of the cog, I would like to see some, pros and cons of, asking the people, do you want to withdraw from the cog, is not really a fair question, because you haven't provided them what you're going to do in the case that you're not in a cog.
Well, I think we actually have more information on that to talk about, but that's a really nice stopping point. So if you can just hold that HCOG thought,
Segue in.
Or we're going to,
because it's 7:30 and we have a scheduled appointment.
Yeah,
have to wait for
go away. Can I ask one question, and it's going to deal with what Jerry suggested? This is a hypothetical situation. Say if our board voted to put the override on as a contingency, would you not support it?
we would not support it.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. Okay.
Okay, so thank you. So we do have a scheduled appointment this evening, and this is a change of beneficial interest for Whole Foods. Right?
This has been a published hearing. We have representatives from Whole Foods and their new parent company, Amazon. And it's the change of beneficial interest. Other query checks have been run. I've already spoken to the state, and everything is set to go on our end. If there's any questions that you might have.
Okay. So,
I'd like to know exactly what it means.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want to just
Sure.
give us a thumbnail?
Definitely. So my name is Raushi Mondlik. I'm with McDermott, Quilty and Miller, and we do have a representative from Whole Foods, Jane Pearson, who's working there for many years. We're here today on two simple transactions, a change of beneficial interest and then a change of officers and directors. The first is the change of beneficial interest. Basically, as I'm sure you heard, it was well publicized. Amazon acquired Whole Foods. This was an acquisition of Whole Foods' parent company, and so Whole Foods market, as you see it, will not change. The licensee will not change. It's the day-to-day operations, the management structure, training will all stay consistent. And this is really just an acquisition of the overall parent company that then requires this transaction. Then the second portion, the change of beneficial interest, the president, Roberta Lang, is stepping down, and so in her place will be Albert Percival, who's already approved as secretary, and he will be stepping up as president as well.
Okay. So any questions?
None.
None? Motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of approving the change in beneficial interest? Thank you.
Aye.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay, so going back to our discussion, what I'd like to do is, because the HCOG is actually a separate item on the warrant, can we hold any discussion about the HCOG until then and just stay focused on the budget right now?
Sure.
Okay.
I did want to point out the one thing with the stabilization. When we talked about it a little bit, we're not great keen on taking out a stabilization, but this stabilization is to fund OPEB. It's like one savings move into another savings, so it's two different savings accounts. And when we talked to the treasurer, we realized that having it in the stabilization, we don't have a great rate of return, whereas having it in the OPEB, it is more beneficial to the town.
In what way?
It's
Linda?
better investment. It makes more money in OPEB than it makes in stabilization.
Am I-
It's a long-term investment.
Yes.
It's the long-term part of it, actually, more than, we're getting a good rate of return on the stabilization too.
Okay.
But
it's better
the
in-
difference is in the liability, our unfunded liability, and as was being mentioned earlier, what is the rate that we're given credit for on the fund based on our funding plan, and a lot of factors go into the calculation of what Hadley's unfunded liability is, and so the dollars that we put in there are not only making the investment fund, but they're reducing our liability. We're winning at both ends, and the real win is that this is not going to be a portion of the budget
someday, and it's not, I don't know how long away it would be, we are hearing of cities that are getting hit with this already, that it's going to start marching up in its place in the budget as the benefits take more and more a chunk of your budget, and it's going to be one of those non-discretionary items. Can't touch that. And so the way we can touch that in the future is we're touching it now by we're putting the funding into OPEB and reducing the liability in the long term so that money will be there to pay to our employees' benefits when they retire, when that time comes, and it will restore as much as possible back in the budget for current spending at that time. So it's more long term, but it's really important. And so I actually agreed with the moving it from one, since we're getting more benefit out of it at OPEB, and I certainly was concerned that that was going to be something that get cut altogether. This seemed like a really good compromise, one-time compromise, to get us from here till spring.
Would you advocate for a warrant article to take our interest from our stabilization fund and use that against OPEB every year? Using the same thought.
The interest isn't enough, but I mean that's a possibility.
No, it's
I mean,
not going to fund it.
Yeah,
but I
it's
mean,
not.
Even if you split it, like to Jerry's point,
Right,
use the
right.
interest and.
As a source, that's something that we should. I mean, we should look at all kinds of. I actually had thought that perhaps you'd want to use the interest from the stabilization for capital. So, but using it for
Well, we
OPEB.
had talked about that years ago,
Right.
that keeping it at 2 million and using the interest or anything above 2 million for capital expenditures. We talked about that many moons ago.
Well, I think we want to target a percentage, because as our budget gets bigger, at some point, the stabilization, you may want to be increasing it, but right now, we have a fair amount of excess.
We
that
can't
should
afford to increase it right now.
No, I'm saying as our budget gets bigger I'm talking like 10 or 15 years from now, we may have.
What did we make last year on interest? On
I was
stabilization?
afraid you were going to ask that.
Ballpark.
Dead or alive.
Oh, I had a sheet in here. Do you remember, David?
It was small money, it was something like $1,500.
Yeah, it wasn't on stabilization.
On stabilization.
It wasn't huge in stabilization. It was larger in OPEB.
OPEB was like 60,000.
Yeah, I thought I was said 35. I do have all that information, but I certainly had enough to know that it is the way it was invested this past year. We did better in
Imagine
OPEB.
having $2 million and you're only gonna make $1,500 on it.
Well, Joyce, there was a time we were making a lot of money on that account.
Well, I know, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, for that amount of
Yeah.
money, Jerry.
Yeah.
How will it,
It's
how
what
would
I'm
it affect
saying.
our bond if we took that stabilization down to like $1.5 million? And put 500,000 into the open?
Well, it's one of those things that depends on what you're going to do with
No, it's
that.
a wash one way
What
or
are you
the
going to do
other.
with that? If you're going to apply that to an operating budget, that's
No,
not
no,
good.
no, no, OPEB.
If you're going to
OPEB.
move it over elsewhere, I don't know. That's something I would want to have a longer discussion about and get our
Because-
advisors in.
And I didn't know if I could support that anyways, because I'm thinking there has to be a number that the stabilization fund has to be, because truly it's there for a reason.
Well,
And
yeah.
if we had something where we needed to touch that money for
Yeah.
it.
Well,
I
we have a
don't-
policy, right?
Yeah,
Don't we have
do.
a policy
Yeah.
on the stabilization? And so we have more than the policy right now. But again, to your point, it's like, we want to be careful not to just start siphoning off.
Right.
But $50,000 from, and again, to the point being, it's reserved to reserve. We're not spending it for,
Absolutely.
to hire somebody.
You know, and like I said, we got the operating budget that I'm looking at. We've got Route 9 project, rough estimate, and I talked to a bunch of people. Probably for the water and sewer for the Route 9 project from Middle Street to the malls, it's gonna be between $8 and $10 million. That's a big number that we need to look at. Everybody needs to look at. You know, never mind the buildings that we just built.
But you're not advocating for taking that out of stabilization like we're talking about.
No, I'm looking at everything from a whole, Jerry, and not just parts of it.
Okay.
So that part of what you want to do between now and spring. Right.
So
That's on the table.
I appreciate you explaining to me
table.
that our benefit for paying the OPEB far exceeds leaving it in the stabilization account. I appreciate that being explained.
All right, now where we going?
Well, and I
Madam
think-
Chair,
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
I spent some time with our assessor's assistant today, and he told me something and I was flabbergasted. I didn't understand. Linda, I'm gonna ask you and see if you can confirm this. The $95 that we're talking about, right, does not include the 2 buildings if they're voted in a positive
No,
manner.
that's not true.
That's what he said. It doesn't include it. We're stretched out on $95 with everything else we have.
No.
No, the $95 was related to the debt exclusion. I'm not following. The $95 includes what we've already voted on, including what we voted on at town meeting. The difference is that the $95 increase, and this is an increase over what the debt and the exclusion, the debt and interest payment was in the budget. Fiscal 17 is the baseline. We said we take that portion of the tax, $95 increase, was going to cover the buildings we voted on then, and it was going to then start coming down in a few years. But with the new buildings in, it was that coming down portion of what we were paying on debt and interest was going to stay up for longer, but it was not going to go above the $95. There's no new $95 increase based on the upcoming election.
So if they don't pass, that $95 figure could go down significantly, you're saying?
Not yet. Not yet. We're
When
already up
you
there.
borrow.
We're
If
already.
we don't borrow, what happens?
You're going to see that $95 increase in fiscal 18.
He says there's no more room for additional debt at all.
He has
Right
not
now.
had he has not had that discussion with me,
Well,
or
that's what he told me.
with David,
So
and I
that's
think
why
that that's
I'm
part
looking
of.
for some clarification
I think
here.
that you
I
should
don't
throw
know.
that back to the team.
Everything he says.
I think most of the people understand that we added 10 years on.
That's
to
it,
the-
John.
To the debt, the
Yeah.
long-term debt,
That's it.
rather
With the
than
two
going
new-
up.
With the 2 new votes on
With the-
November
yes,
14th.
yes.
That's right. We could have increased it.
Yes, but we didn't.
We kept
Decided
it
to-
for a longer period of time.
We went out, not up,
Correct.
on the long-term.
There's no new increase. There is. Would it have come down? Yes. If we voted nothing new, of course
You
it would
just
come
need to
down.
listen
That's
to
why we
them.
were able to afford the buildings, because the debt was coming down. Otherwise, it would be a whole lot more than a $95 increase.
So the additional,
Sorry.
I think at one of these meetings, I'm not, quote me, so with the new, if the new requests get voted in,
Mhm.
what you're doing is you're stretching the year, so it
Yes.
stays at 95, you're stretching it more years
Yes.
than originally planned. That is why it's staying at the $95 mark and
Yes.
not going up. Is that what you're asking, Don?
No, I understand that completely.
Okay.
That isn't what he told me. He told me something completely different. That's why I wasn't,
If he's
I was
making
looking
a-
for a
Well,
clarification.
I
So
think
if
that
he's-
we should meet then.
Yeah, I think so.
that
Somebody,
absolutely we
because
should
I'm
meet.
totally confused
We
right
need the
now.
same information going out from everyone in town
I
hall. and it's-
agree.
And it's, yep, I'd like to hear it.
Well, shouldn't those
So-
questions happen at a meeting and not one-on-one?
Sure.
Okay.
So I just
Invite him to finance.
I just
will.
want to.
We will. Absolutely.
David has the floor.
Thank you. I just want to point out that you all have a budget book. In that budget book, there are long-range financial policies. And most of them, a lot of them have talked to debt. Right now, our debt is at about 6% of our operating budget, which is on the low end of the scale for the town of Hadley. The upper end of the scale would be 10%. Adding in the additional debt that we're talking about would bring us up to around 8%. So we're still in the middle of that sweet spot between 10% of our debt service is, 10% of our budget is dedicated to debt service, and 6% of our budget is dedicated to debt service. We're right in that zone. So we have a lot of additional debt that we could do if we wanted to.
With town meeting's permission.
With town meeting, of course, I'm just saying in terms of policies. And our debt limits are well below the state required minimums. So,
You know, and I think we need to explain a little bit more what we do with that 2.5% that we raise every year? Because I brought that up last week too. We're going up $1 million a year, what are we doing with that money? So we need a little bit more in-depth explanation of that first.
Right, how much is being absorbed?
Exactly, that would be all part of your overriding question at that point in time, sure.
Is that to the members, John, or to the public?
Everyone.
Yeah, public.
Next week they can
We have
vote
a
at
forum.
the open
No, no, no,
forum.
I know.
Yeah.
Just a clarifying question. Do you want me to ask you?
You go ahead,
Okay.
I asked you.
So just the numbers that are on this sheet here, the 136 and the like, is that prorated? Is that a 6-month number, or is that from October 5th forward?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah,
So
except
6
for the
months from
OPEB.
July?
No, January through June.
December 31st or January
Because
1st.
you figure, how long will it take them to hire somebody and?
Well, I mean, all of the numbers, the 7,000 for the stipends, those
Oh,
are
okay,
all,
that's what you're
is that
saying.
every, David, those are?
Oh, I see, no, those are
No.
12 months figures,
12-month figures, so
Yeah.
starting
So only
when?
half of them.
starting July 1st.
July 1st of
Yeah.
this next coming year?
No, this year.
This year?
So,
You would retroactively,
so we would have to give money back?
you don't have to give money back, but you would have to find it within your budgets to do that.
Yeah, set a good
So
example,
from the
put the
select
money
board
back.
budget? Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm like, okay.
Oh, have you paid that?
I haven't got paid since I've been here.
No, you get paid by the town.
Yeah, I got you.
No more pay.
Shit.
Yeah, okay.
No more pay.
What's $100 a month?
All right, so maybe we can
$84.
divide it into 2 pieces, because there's some discussion on the table about, do we move forward with what we were discussing previously as Plan A and only introduce this as Plan B? Or do people feel more comfortable putting a hold on Plan A and bringing a more robust, better vetted version of that forward in the future, and going to town meeting with this right now, and then that means that the November 14th ballot would strictly be the building votes and the
equipment.
equipment that's
Capital.
on here. Yeah, capital.
Capital.
Does anybody want to advocate for staying with the, Jerry posed the question about the contingency. How do people feel about that?
We won't support the contingency of the finance committee.
It's my preference to just move to the Plan B, but how does everybody else feel?
I'd rather have a firm budget at town meeting, so I would vote to go with this Plan B.
Donald and John, how do you feel?
Well, as I said, a couple weeks ago, as a selectman, I'm still compelled to give the people the right to vote on it.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Vote on what, which one?
The contingency. They have the right to vote on it, I think. If we don't support it, we could tell them that. Or if we support it, but I think they have the opportunity to vote on it.
Doesn't it make more sense to give them a more cogent plan than that?
I think they look to us as leaders, is to provide them with some good guidance, and I think we need to,
But there's a couple of negatives that could happen if they go and they vote on this now. They'll go into the ballot box and they'll have all these things to vote on, all of which raise their taxes. They could just shut down and say no to everything, right? Which we don't want them to do. Because they can say, well, they don't know what they're doing. They put on this override, and we just had overrides for these buildings, and they could just vote down everything, and you could lose the whole kit kat and caboodle. If you let them just vote on the buildings, and then next time we come with a cogent plan for an override for the town's operating budget, and we have a well thought out plan, I would be much more likely to vote for a well thought out plan than something I thought was slapdash.
Well, and then the other side of it that I'll argue is we also, I'm going to use the same language, for some people, we run the risk of it passing. And then going back to the fact that, again, I keep trying to listen to you, John, I hear what you say. There is an element of the population that if everything were, if the contingent, if we go with the 275 or whatever, and then we go to the ballot and then everything passes then,
Those people are done.
those people, Yeah, and so again, I go back to Donald wanting to put that in the context. If we can find a way within the confines of the law to provide some
Exempt, yeah.
relief to some people by exempting them, and we just don't have time to do that between now and October 5th.
But there are mechanisms to exempt people who are on fixed incomes. There are protections for small businesses that we can put in as well if we're going to go to a split tax rate. So there's a lot of planning that can be done to make this a more cogent argument than we just say, okay, we need a fire department, we're going to ask you for this money, and then, yeah, we'll get the fire department, but we won't get anything else because we don't have a plan for it.
Yeah, because that's, my point is to get everything in front of the taxpayers in one matrix, so the taxpayers can vote on it all. To bring
But we
some
don't
this
have
year.
all, we don't have
To
all
bring
of it.
some this year, and then the next year show up and say, well, we had a fire department for half the year, and we need to pass this override to fund it for the next year.
But that's not how
And
it's
if
going to be
we-
worded.
And if we don't, then we have no fire department.
No, but that's not how it's going to be.
That's how
not
it's-
the-
that's how it's
It's not the fire
happening.
department that will lose out. All the departments will have to kick in, including the schools. The fire department will stay.
The fire department at this point is gonna go into the budget, so it's not gonna be, they're a department now like anybody else. Once we fund them, they're in there, so it doesn't, we can't say it's the fire department at that point. It's an unbalanced budget at that point for next year.
So Jerry, actually, it sounded like you were making the argument to hold and do this all in the spring.
I would like everybody to have the entire listings on one sheet with all the overrides at one point in time, so that the taxpayers can prioritize what they want to spend their money on.
Right, and we don't have that now, do you agree? Because we don't have like.
We have an override we have the 270 override that was available to us, Plan A, not Plan B, but Plan A, and we also have the other ones, and everything was going to be on the overrides come the 15th.
But everything wouldn't be on the override because we would still come back in the spring and when we need IT and we need this and we need that and we need the other thing.
It's still
So-
just a temporary fix until next fiscal.
It is still a
It's
temporary-
absolutely a temporary fix
It's
for next
and
year,
we agree with that. It's absolutely a temporary
if we go
fix.
Plan B.
It-
Plan A is not.
No, Plan A is temporary because I think the
Plan A
point
is
is
still
we'd
temporary because we
likely.
still don't have all the things we need. We still wouldn't have addressed.
You're
them.
never going to have everything you need. There'll always be things that we need.
But we can do a better job than this for sure.
Okay.
I guess my problem with the whole thing is we're only funding the fire department position for 6 months. That's all we're doing. And I'm much more comfortable funding them for a full year as part of the levy. This way, everything's up in the air next year with 2019. You may vote to keep the firemen, but you may lose teachers and policemen or DPW workers. So what did you achieve? Nothing.
Well,
Well, we achieved not burning down buildings.
Well, no, but that's the whole point of, again, trying to take a look at this to say, we've really only been attacking the expense side over the past few months. We have not been addressing the revenue side. And I think.
But we
Well, I
don't
think
have
it
any
would-
new revenues coming in 2019.
Well-
That's what we need is new revenues, and we
Well,
don't have them.
and
So
that's-
there's gonna be
that's-
additional cuts in 2019 no matter what
But
we
that's
do.
Not
where you're
if.
looking at the tax
That's
split.
why we have to look at the split tax
The
rate.
split
And
tax
the
rate isn't
override at
gonna
the same
help.
And
time.
the override at the
Okay.
same time and protect.
Hang on. Quick lesson on split tax rates. If you just do a split tax rate, it doesn't, to Donald's point, increase the pie. The only thing you're doing is you are reallocating
The
an
shift.
existing pie. However, if in fact you bring forward an override simultaneously with a split tax rate, the pie gets bigger by the amount of the override, but you're also adjusting the allocation of that increase at the same time. So we would then have an opportunity to look at how much additional burden would fall to residential versus commercial, and we would have had a lot more discussion in here and a lot more information on the table so that we could in fact attempt to perhaps protect people who don't have the resources to fund that. If we just go with this contingent override now, it falls within the single tax rate system, And the chips are gonna fall where they fall, and we're going to upset a fair number of people, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. And I also think we're not addressing everything. We're only addressing the fire department. We love you, but we're only addressing the fire department, and we do have other needs. And it's also possible that between now and then, we may find other resources, such as the RFP will have come back for the ambulance service. That may or may not either generate additional revenue or decrease cost, or both. You know, we have the opportunity to be looking at some other initiatives we discussed. So I'm just afraid 3 questions from town meeting floor, and we're gonna look, I didn't say that. We're gonna look like we haven't done our due diligence.
Right, so if we presented
No,
an
most of the
override,
revenues are used up by residential. Businesses take hardly any residential.
No,
Businesses,
that is not
Why
true.
are
it's
we
minimal
increasing
compared
fire
to
department?
residential. Businesses don't
Police-
send kids to school,
Public
first of
safety.
all.
Our
Public
police and
safety.
fire,
You know,
for a community our
it's
size-
minimal.
Where do you spend all your time?
Safety.
Route 9.
Route 9. Where does Mike
That's
Mason
one
and
aspect. But how many businesses send kids to school? That's 52% of our budget. They send 0.
And I'm glad you brought the schools up,
You
because
know.
the schools have not been at the table, and there's been a fairly significant ongoing trend of a declining enrollment. And I think we really need to be talking to our school committee about plans there, Donald. And again, we would just kind of be shoving that to the side and ignoring it, and putting the burden on the current.
You have to understand what trouble these big box stores are in today, and the malls. Toys R Us just filed for bankruptcy the other day. They cannot compete with Amazon.
Don, what's
And
our
our
tax-
commercial district is based on big box stores right now.
What is our tax rate in town versus any other town that these
If
big
you
box
want, that's a
stores
whole
are
new
in?
ballgame. If the people want to vote to raise their taxes, you can have more services. There's no question about that, but we're talking here without raising taxes.
I say that the bargains that Whole Foods has in the town of Hadley, because our tax rate being so low, is significantly less than the one in Cambridge, where the taxes are twice as high as ours, and yet they still
they have 3 at
survive.
Cambridge.
And they still survive.
You're gonna have an influx of businesses going to the appellate tax board for rebates. And then the amount of money that you think you're saving is gonna go topsy-turvy and cost you twice as much in the end.
David, would you like to respond to that?
No, I just want to bring the focus of the conversation back to Article 1, and we have a task to accomplish, which is to prepare a warrant for town meeting. We can go forward with this article with the select board recommendation pending, or we can have a select board recommendation.
Okay, Jane, you wanted to say something?
I do. I want to just point out that having listened and been involved actively for the last couple of years, the town is changing. Last fall, you said they'll never vote for all 9 articles. They gave you everything you asked for. Last spring, they said they'll never vote for all this. They voted yes for everything. This summer, you said they won't vote for this. They voted yes. The town has recognized, and I'm hearing it out there, that to maintain what we have and the community we have, we need to spend money. We don't like it, and I think the idea that we could have some kind of relief for fixed income people would be marvelous, but I think that what the finance committee is saying is correct. We need to get the big picture, tell the town what we need, what we want, how it's gonna work, and they'll support it. They like it here, and we still, as Jerry said, have the lowest tax rate going.
You know, and everybody's been talking about just a split tax rate, and some kind of tiered system probably would be more feasible for the town of Hadley. With the amount of seniors you have, with the amount of small businesses that are in the town of Hadley, and the amount of big box commercial businesses that we have, you know?
Well, that's why we need a full education on what all of
Yeah.
the options are with the tax system.
Does the Amherst Better Business Bureau touch on any of this stuff?
The Chamber of Commerce? No. I mean, they will advocate, and they will be a convener and bring
Because
businesses
I know
together
some
to
of
have
our
a
big
forum.
boxes are part of that, so.
Yeah, they are.
But they don't have it.
They might be on the other side, John.
Mike?
Just a question, is the annual town meeting gonna be enough time to get all this work done? Because I'm just looking at is, you're asking me to find 4 firefighters, or 3 firefighters for 6 months. So, you know, I have to tell them that this is
No,
not.
they're being hired permanently.
Yeah,
They're being
They're in the budget.
permanent.
Potentially, but I mean, you're talking about potentially taking away a senior director, or John Washkevitz at the water treatment plant. How do you, I understand we're all saying that the fire department is important, but how do you, I'm just saying that my concern is you're taking away services from departments that need to exist too. And some of them are, you know, everybody's
We have
budget
to
is,
share the pot, Mike.
I hear we have to share the pot, I get that. I've been
We
So-
have
sharing
to
the
have
pot.
safety.
We're giving
We have
you
to
a
do
bigger
that.
share. Think of it just as a pie. So your allocation of that pie is going up.
I hear you. I hear
And yes,
that.
it means that we need to figure out what to do with the rest of the pie in the absence of it getting bigger. But that's, I mean, just respectfully, that's, you need to advocate, as you have been, for what you need. And no one is suggesting you hire people, I mean, who on earth is gonna apply for a 6-month gig? So you need to move forward with the hire, and we need to figure it out. And I think that's certainly where you guys are going.
Right, and we do not think it's a good idea to go to the people and say, we want an override specifically and only for for firemen. We need an override for all the services in Hadley, including a fire department. You can't just hang it on the fire department.
Yeah, well, that's kind of.
But
what I was
it
getting
makes
to.
the
Pie bigger.
But to John's, going back to the statement John made earlier, people want to know what happens with the 2.5 every year, right?
Mhm.
So every year, it goes up by 2.5%, so it's not that there won't be additional dollars. Worst case scenario, we may be looking at some level funding in other places and stuff like that too. It doesn't necessarily absolutely mean that there are
I mean,
dire cuts. We wanna
expenses
be
always
cautious of
go
that.
up. There's no question about it.
Well, I just want to make sure that the taxpayer realizes that we are not cutting other positions strictly just for, I completely advocate for the firefighters, but I want to make sure that folks don't think that it's because of the firefighters that other people may be suffering.
We're not cutting, this
Nothing
is one
anybody's
thing,
suffering,
we're not
nobody's
cutting anybody.
No, I'm not talking
Hey,
about this,
hey,
I'm
hey,
talking about for next budget.
You'll be fine.
You're all right.
I promise to get my next garage door from you.
You know, I think we're all talking the same way. We're all advocating for a balanced budget for 218. What we're seeing is, as I said at the staff meeting the other day, is if you take an iceberg, it's starting to come out of the water, and 218 is showing the tip of the iceberg, and we're trying to balance 218 so we can pay our bills and our vendors. In 219, the whole iceberg is coming out of the water, and we're gonna have to deal with that whole
And we will
situation.
be dealing with that the day after town meeting. That's when that starts.
And exactly,
So
and you know, I really feel that we should fund the fire department for 12 months and avoid layoffs. They'll become part of the levy, and I think we should give the townspeople an opportunity to vote on that. If they care about protecting their property and themselves, they're gonna vote for it. And then we're gonna deal with it in 219. If they don't vote for an override, we don't get it. And then we're gonna deal with reality.
Are you gonna vote, you said in past meetings that you as a select board will pass it along like the voters decide, but you also stated that you wouldn't vote for an override for yourself personally.
I will vote for the fire department. Because
Okay,
I
that's
want
not
them
what you
funded
said
for
in the
12
past.
months, not a Band-Aid effect for 6 months, and it becomes part of the levy.
I'll submit to you that the quote Plan A is more of a Band-Aid than the quote Plan B for the following reason. You're not considering the whole town budgets and you're just asking for a quick fix for one small problem that you have. That's a real Band-Aid. We need to have a complete plan in place. We need to protect our fixed income folks. We need to protect our small business folks. If we're going to have a split tax rate, we need to have discussions on the best way to do that to make sure that's a good thing to do, and then implement that as part of our override. We have to have a real plan. And I'll remind the board that before the last town meeting, we said, okay, boy, we really got to fund this fire department. That's going to be our #1 priority. And then town meeting came and town meeting went, and I didn't hear anything about it until it became the 11th hour again, and here we are. So hopefully after this town meeting, it will be actually on the front burner of both the finance committee and the select board to get this override for 219 organized properly.
So in the
Well-
spirit of embracing continuous improvement, is there anybody?
I'm gonna make a motion to accept Plan B, to go forward in Article 1.
Is there a
Right.
second on Joyce's motion?
There is a second.
Okay, all in favor of proceeding
No
with?
further discussion?
Oh.
Had enough, Jerry.
I apologize, Madam Chair.
I know I'm gonna get cut off if there is, so I
Now
don't
who's using
care.
the chair?
Yeah. All right, motion made and seconded, all in favor of proceeding with this plan? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, so 4-1-0.
And could I know what the finance committee voted on this?
Thank you.
5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, all right,
Move
so
on.
that was Article 1, but that was a really, really good discussion, because we're gonna hear, you know, again, Donald may have voted in the minority, but at this point, but again, everybody represents a viewpoint out there, so it's important.
You know, and like I said, and I made this statement before, you know, the highway gave back over $30,000 last year. So highways in there, sewers in there, water's in there for a specific issue, obviously. But if they gave back that money, why can't they expend it before we vote for an override? This is what I'm saying, separating this, as I said last week. I'll vote to put it on in front of the people, but I'm not necessarily gonna vote for it on town meeting floor.
All right, Article 2.
So, yeah, we'll more discussion after
Can we get
that.
some clarification on the stipends?
Yes.
The other day at the staff meeting, someone said that we have to voluntarily give it if you want to take them. The assessor. Is that true?
I would like to find that.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's what I'm asking. You know, because the stipend, the way I look at it, it cost me well over $5,000 to be a selectman. This vote on ethics has pushed my last year over 10,000 plus. The 1,200, I look at it to pay for gas, going to all the meetings that I go to. So if I start putting in my gas bills, it's going to far exceed $1,200. That's the way I look at it. You know, what's it, almost 50 cents a mile now for gas? So how long is it going to take me to get up to $1,200? Putting bills in for mileage. All the meetings we go to, county, state,
But
locally.
same for all of us.
Yeah, we do it for 100.
Yeah. But you guys come here, you don't go to the meetings anywhere near what we do, you know?
Well,
There's
as
no
far as
question.
your ethics board meetings, that was.
That has nothing to do
Brian,
with
you
my
mentioned it.
thing.
Okay, so, anyway, so I think everybody has to kind of do their own soul searching,
That's
and
right.
we'll get back to David.
So,
Doesn't need to
then I
be
have a
public.
question. So if that's if the case is that you don't have to volunteer your fundings, can you, as a select board, kind of just make them advisory boards, and then that would just take away the fundings?
Well, I think what we're doing here is we're voting to reduce those budgets by these dollar amounts, correct?
And make them non-paid positions? And to further notice?
That's the intent.
Okay.
Well, that's what I was saying, though. You can cut the salary out, but then I can put mileage in, and I'll far exceed the 1,200 with mileage, believe me.
Okay, well, I mean, it'll
Through
be,
the expense
it'll be an
account.
experiment then.
Yeah.
Linda?
Could I suggest that, once again, this is a one-time fix?
Yeah.
There's nothing to say that looking ahead in boards in future years, that an assessment, readjustment, rebalancing of boards
across the board
Right.
would be part of that.
Which we had on
would-
our
is
to-do
part of
list.
what's on the table.
Yeah.
So this is getting from here to spring.
Okay, Article 2?
Article 2 is housekeeping. This is cleaning up old balances from projects that are done, and we have a little balance left over we don't need. Return it to the original place from which it came. I would like to put this on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Is there any, second for discussion,
Yep.
is there any movement on that money at all, or is that a fixed, is that, there's no more money available there? On Article 2, that's completely done?
I think this is what we've been able to get for you this time. Every town meeting, we always go back and we sweep up. And
Okay.
Is there something you think is missing?
Nope,
Or you're just
nope,
asking?
just asking.
Okay. Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. Yep. Okay. Article 3.
Revolving funds, also, I'd like to put this on the consent agenda. This is a requirement for the Department of Revenue. This is a vote that we take every year at the annual town meeting that changed the rules. So now we want to do it as a bylaw in accordance to what the mandate from the state is.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Article 4. Stabilization.
53,402 from free cash into the stabilization account.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 5.
This is a capital article.
And, okay, so capital planning this week?
Yes, we
right?
did.
And you guys recommended 0 except for the fire department vehicle.
Correct.
Which is the administrative vehicle?
Right,
Okay. And that's to be passed over.
yes.
And Finance Committee recommended the whole slate.
Mike wanted to speak to that.
Could I ask why that was passed over?
Nobody came to tell us what it was for.
Oh,
I did invite you.
okay, all right.
And that's why.
Do you want to speak to it now?
Well, my committee's not here.
Oh.
Okay, I had spoken with Joyce about it, I'm sorry, I didn't
Nobody,
make it to the meeting. 'cause
I didn't
had-
know there was a meeting either, I'm sorry, Mike.
That's right.
Well, can I just ask a question? If it's passed over now and it's brought forward in the spring, is there,
Well, we're running on a vehicle that's started on fire twice now and can't put into park, and so that's why when I submitted the article, I thought I'd explain that in that, but I haven't been able to make the meeting with my home, what's going on at home, so.
There's no reason why you can't put the motion in front of the voters for the fire administrative vehicle.
It is in front of the voters.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
is.
say, it
It
is.
absolutely
This
is in
is
front of the
just
voters.
why-
One committee didn't vote on it, all the rest of them.
Okay.
Oh, so we can vote on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike, would you explain it to everybody like you did to me? It's easier if you say, could you explain what happened here?
Yeah, so the vehicle that we have that we're looking to replace is, it was a DCR free vehicle that we have. It's a 2000 Ford Expedition with 164,000 miles on it that we received from Granby. And the costs to try and fix it now are excessive. The vehicle that I have, the fire chief's vehicle, was a state appropriation that unfortunately was pushed to the following fiscal year, so we had to fund it through the town. So what we did with the money that came in the following year, instead of us getting a second vehicle with that funding, we use it to pay for the police chief's vehicle. So basically, my chief's car is the first vehicle that the fire department's ever had as a staff vehicle. We've always gotten free vehicles from DCR or used old police cruisers, but DCR, they don't have them anymore. You can't find them or anything that's reasonably decent. So we're looking for something that's safe for Nick and for Brian. It's just gotten to the point where it's not possible to fix it anymore.
I make a motion, we vote for everything in that article as a board.
okay, motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You said, okay, 5-0. Okay, Article 6, North Hadley Village Ball Field, changing the word.
Just change the wording, a simple majority vote.
Motion to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Can I ask the finance committee, was there abstention? It must,
We're on
It
Article
wasn't a-
6.
Six.
it's an abstention because of a neighborhood issue?
Neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Because she's like a butter.
Article 7 would
Article
be
s-
HCOG.
Yeah, so can I, so I just want to go back to, so Tom raised this conversation, and if I can fill people in on, I had a separate conversation with Todd Ford, so, I mean, clearly I wasn't I didn't make it to the meeting in time to hear their presentation.
We're on
But-
Article 7 now?
Yeah, we're on the HCOG. So here's what I think I know, and Donald obviously is a representative, and I think
I'll
also
chime in
support.
after you're done.
Yeah. So
Article 7 or Article 8?
to withdraw from the HCOG.
I have the one I printed off today that says draft 7.
Yeah, that's no good.
Oh, okay. So
That's the problem.
So Todd Ford had called me and wanted to have a conversation because a couple of meetings ago, we had some questions when they came in about their current financial situation. And Donald had pointed out at that point in time that they still didn't even have the audit from the prior year yet, okay? So they're already through one, so we're going back a couple of fiscal years. And there was a lot of back and forth between me and Todd about the responses. That they weren't necessarily making sense to me, and I was trying to get my arms wrapped around the whole electricity program and how much of the regular operations outside of that was in a deficit, which it is, and then the electricity was filling in. Then the audit came out, and their audit report, the auditors put in something called going concern language, which is something that one never wants to see in an audit report, because the auditors, Lance and Heath, who they've had for a while, were indicating that because they basically had all of their eggs in one basket, and they had one-time money that had come in from the sale of the Hampshire Care property, they had already gone through all of that cash. And then on top of it, the electricity program was iffy. They also had some potential litigation claims out there at the time. So that was one thing. So just on the financial statements and the related footnotes alone, there were flags left and right about the future viability of the organization. What Todd wanted to tell me was that they had hired a public relations person, and that they were concerned about a lot of the bad press that they had been getting, and they wanted to kind of change their image, which is why they hired the PR person. Only the day before they met with me, it was right on Mass Live again, a big article, and Donald mentioned it in a meeting to us, that they had just granted all of these bonuses to their staff when they're operating in a deficit and they have a going concern opinion from the auditor. So I'm sorry, just my personal opinion is that's not a good place for any organization to be in, but I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Todd explained that they'd turned a corner, that things were getting better, that they expected that the operations would pick up a bit, that the electric program would be in the black. But he also freely admitted that they knew that they had a very bad public relations issue, and that they had not been providing the services that perhaps people were expecting up until this point, but he was committed to changing that going forward. And, he then went on to say that they were being as fiscally responsible as possible and very much focused on squeezing every nickel out of the revenue that they were getting from their members. And I challenged that, saying, well, I've just read an article saying that all these bonuses were paid out, so how do you reconcile that? And he said that we really didn't understand that they were not a government organization. Those really weren't public dollars, because the majority of the revenue coming in was coming from private side through the electric program. So my argument at that point was, if indeed these are government dollars, then you're really not spending them very wisely, and if anything, you're actually, no one else does that. We would never see that in municipal government, state government, or anything else where these bonuses can just be given out to employees outside the context of a defined compensation plan. And on the other hand, if you want to be treated like a private organization, then if we did vendor due diligence, we would never keep working with somebody who had a going concern opinion from an outside auditor and was running in a deficit position. So I don't think they can have their cake and eat it too. I was an advocate for staying in the COG and trying to fix it, but to be honest with you, it's just day after day after day getting peppered with emails and people having complaints about the COG. It's wasting my time. I feel like it's wasting Donald's time. Mr. Ford, the current director, doesn't seem to be accepting any accountability or responsibility for the operations of the COG. And I think you heard that the other night. Everything was sugar plums and
Very
rosy.
rosy.
So my thought right now is what's in the best interest of the town is rather than just continuing this bleeding and wasting of energy with the HCOG, I would be in favor of putting this vote on town meeting floor, and I think that at this point, David has done enough due diligence. We get minimal services from the COG, and the Franklin County governments can easily step in to play that role. And I would like to put them on notice and just be done with it and let the other members who perpetuate this thing, let them figure it out.
Would you speak to that at town meeting?
I'm more than happy to.
I was interested to hear all the benefits that our senior center receives from them, and they went on for 10 minutes about all the benefits that the town of Hadley receives through the senior center by utilizing the COG.
Last night, the senior center
Hasn't talked to him in 2 years.
Right. She's like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
I was
Exactly.
impressed when I heard that.
Didn't you hear? I mean, I was like, how can we get rid of the COG? Look at everything we gained from it. And none of it was accurate.
Some of the actual figures, I believe, are in the school department and power.
Don't you get something from, through the
What?
No,
highway?
Marlo's doing it through
Purchasing.
FERCog now.
Purchasing?
Yeah, he's doing it through
Marlo's,
FERCog.
okay.
Yeah.
But because the sewer with the sludge was through Franklin County for probably 10 years now.
All right, put it back on.
Donald?
Yeah,
As
I-
a guest to speak to it.
You know, I asked them to come and present before the Board of Selectmen so they could express themselves and answer some of our questions that we had. I was very disappointed. I spent the day there earlier telling them to inform us about all the new revenues and everything. They didn't mention anything. Catherine Welker, I asked her to tell us what innovative measures you're gonna do to improve the COG so more people will respond to it. Not one word from her that evening they presented to us. She didn't say anything. You know, since then, the antics are still continued. Someone called me and I thought it was a rumor. And then I called right over there and I found it to be true that they asked the trust to leave the Hampshire County and find quarters elsewhere. And that atones to $57,000 in additional revenues
Why would they want to get rid of the rent?
because it's political over there. They don't like them. They didn't give them the bonuses, saying they're not part of the COG because the trust is a separate entity. And this is part of the 52 people that come and go and leave there because of all the in-house fighting over there. You know, and after they left, I was very disappointed, and I thought we possibly could have gave them some time and deal with this in the annual town meeting, but now I'm inclined to agree with you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve withdrawal from the HCOG effective July 1st of next year.
Second.
Oh, wait, this says July 2019.
Yeah, you gotta give
Takes a
them
year to get
Yeah,
out.
that's right, okay, 1 year notice, okay. All right, so is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Do
Aye.
we have the actual figures that we're spending with them and what they're actually saving?
He brought
us?
that, remember when he came in
I seen
March?
some of it, yeah.
Yeah,
But are all those still accurate figures?
They're available.
We don't have to be a member to still enjoy having their benefits.
yeah. We're just withdrawing.
We still
from the
can do
council.
it.
Yeah.
And they'll gladly accept us if we go into the energy program or anything.
Did you vote, John, or no?
Yes.
Okay, so 5-0? Okay.
David, do we need to vote? That's why we continue.
No, you took a vote last night.
No, they passed
In light of
over.
the
No,
new
they-
information
It's
and
Yeah.
it being a,
Passed
Yeah, that's
over.
why we continued, so we could vote on it
Yeah,
tonight.
if you've changed your position, then yes, you may.
Okay.
Do you guys want to confer, or?
We would like to, do you agree?
I agree, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to withdraw from the HCOG as well.
Second?
All in favor?
point of
Aye.
order, it's not HCOG anymore, is it?
It's HC.
302.
Work with him.
302.
302. What'd you say?
302.
We only have.
No, they're
I'm
not.
abstaining.
Oh, you're abstaining too?
Okay.
I
Yeah,
have to.
well, wait a minute, there are only 3 of them here.
There's
There's
not
only
three
3 of us here.
So where did you get 5?
I'm not
Two
gonna sit on the board
absentees.
with the 2-1-2
Oh,
chair
absent.
of HCOG.
So they didn't abstain,
Absent.
they're just not here.
Right.
It's 2-1-2.
So it's
Do you have any more meetings before town meeting?
201.
Me?
No, as board.
We had a meeting
One.
yesterday.
Yes, one
We usually would meet tomorrow, but we moved it.
Can you schedule for the night of the forum and vote on this?
Yeah.
Everybody will be at the forum anyways, right?
When is the forum?
The 20,
Next Wednesday,
yeah.
right?
Next Wednesday.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll be there.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
if we could hold off till they vote at the night of the forum, but
that way the
Oh, that's
other
up to them.
two,
that's what they asked for.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
we-
take that off.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Rescind your vote.
Sorry.
Yes.
Rescind.
Yeah, well, I-
Okay.
Because Terry had to abstain, so you don't have a quorum. I mean, you don't have a majority.
I sit on the board.
Completely understand,
odds.
completely
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Sorry for your
well,
troubles.
You can just leave it as
I already told him I have to abstain
recommendation
whatever it is
pending
issue.
till we get to the floor.
Yeah, we can move it to pending.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Article 8.
spending.
Pending.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
This I thought I'd put on the consent agenda.
okay, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Kelly,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, was there a second on your motion?
second.
Motion made, seconded, all in favor of Article 8?
Yes.
Aye.
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 All right, the last three articles are
CPA.
CPA articles, and I can never keep in mind whether you vote these or not.
I don't think we do.
Do not.
Okay, all right, so we've made it through a warrant.
Hallelujah. Motion to adjourn.
Division of motions.
Division of
Second.
motions.
Division, yeah, pass them all.
Budget adjustment.
Do you want me or finance committee or you?
Where are we?
How do you want to do that?
So who wants to speak to Article 1?
Oh, Article 1.
Yeah.
We like
Yeah, some. Or I can.
I get shanghaied into this, it's okay. I'll speak to Article
I
1.
was just gonna tell you that I would do that. if you wanted
No, if you
to.
want to, well, if you want to, go ahead.
No, I don't have the major
All right,
desire
so the
to,
fund
but,
balance
you know.
transfer. Fund balance transfer, Article 2.
Which ones are consent, David?
That's a consent one.
So is there anything to speak to?
Oh,
Doesn't
no,
Brian
we
just
know
read
this
those?
one.
Yeah, in the
Brian,
beginning of
just
the
read
meeting.
that if it doesn't.
Brian can do that.
Yeah, Brian does that at the beginning.
Okay. Revolving funds is a consent. Transfer of free cash to stabilization. Don't be bashful.
Where, is this article?
4.
I'm bored.
I'll do four.
I got 5.
Donald, how about you and I do HCOG together?
Whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it'll just shock people to see Donald
You know,
and I
I
at the
think-
microphone together.
we could allow Mr. Starzinski to speak too, because he was there 11 years, and the reason why he quit through frustration,
Well,
you know?
but I'd rather keep it away from that. I mean, I think if it comes up, you know what I mean, Donald?
I think he may get up and speak anyway.
That's what I mean,
That's
but
what you
rather
mean.
than.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
6 is consent.
So, yeah, 6 is consent, and then the amended language for the fire substation location.
Okay.
Who?
I will.
May I have a vote to sign the warrant, please?
Motion to sign.
Second.
All in favor of signing the warrant?
Aye.
Congratulations, you have a warrant.
Okay.
So done.
Anybody need a fashion show ticket?
I
Hey,
don't,
it's a great tea party too.
won't be in time.
Yeah.
We're staying in town for a drink.
I know, trailer's gotta come home. One man's gotta have surgery again.
Do that guy now.
Okay, is that it? Is that it for the meeting?
Again?
That's it.
Gosh, do I, any announcements?
I'd like to have an announcement. Charlie Abramson passed away from the town of Amherst, but young Charlie, or I don't know if that's appropriate anyways, but Charlie Abramson lives in town and wish to extend the best to him and his family.
Okay. Anything else?
I have students of Hadley helping students of Hurricane Harvey.
Very nice.
Join Hopkins Academy students in supporting the teachers and students of the Little Cypress Mercerville School District in Orange County, Texas. They will be collecting school supplies, backpacks, money, and Amazon gift cards, September 18th through September 25th. Show the strength of our community with support for their community. A donation box for supplies is located in both the lobby of Hopkins Academy and Hadley Elementary. Items may be dropped off during school hours. Money and gift card donations will be accepted in the Hopkins Academy office. Please put in an envelope clearly marked for Hurricane Harvey supplies. The first set of boxes will be shipped to Morrisville early next week. And they do give suggestions, pencils, erasers, anything that you might think that the kids would use at school. And you can also contact, or any questions can be directed to Christine Pipchinsky, cpipchinsky@hadleyschools.org. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind if you gave her a call or called the school if you had any other questions.
And Jane, is there something you wanted to mention?
Fashion show.
We're also having another fundraiser supported by Texas Roadhouse, which is if you buy a gift card in advance for your own use or for a gift, the senior center gets 10%. The way that works is you come into the office or find a member of the Friends and pay any denomination you want for a gift card from $5 to $100 and any number of those cards. And every other Wednesday, we take those monies and they make the gift cards for them, and then you can pick them up the next day.
Wouldn't they make a nice holiday gift?
They make wonderful holiday gifts, they make perfect birthday gifts, and they're good for you, even if you know you're gonna go out and you should have, but don't think I'm going out tonight, I better go to the senior center and buy one, because that doesn't work. You have to plan ahead.
Chief?
The Fire Association's doing their annual fundraising drive, so if folks get called at home for donations, that actually
It's
is
legit.
a legit thing.
Legit, that's a
You
good
can
thing
call
to
the fire
know.
department to confirm if you'd like.
When is that taking place?
Thank you.
Mike,
Is she starting now, or?
when is that taking
Calls.
place?
The comedy show is scheduled for sometime at the beginning of December. The final date hasn't been officially done yet, but the first 2 Fridays of December we'll get the info.
Okay, we have a forum next week. What will
Thank
be
you
the
everyone for
format
the
for
chicken
forum?
barbecue, we've made out really well, maybe.
Oh yeah, the chicken barbecue was very busy, successful. Thank you for everybody who came out. It was a good time. Sorry. Thank
So
you.
the forum next week, Jerry's just asking, so PowerPoint,
Be ready to speak to your articles that you're signed up for now, right? As such.
you'll put together talking points in advance?
I shall, and so what we'll do is, we have 11
We'll be
articles.
I
We'll
I
give a
think our
little-
finance committee would probably like to weigh in on a lot of the articles
Yeah.
that probably have to do with them and the hard
Certainly
work that they've
Article
done.
one, Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
All
No
right.
surprises, make sure you're there.
Anything else tonight?
7 o'clock at Hopkins?
7 o'clock.
Anything
So
else?
I have a question about that. I thought I saw on the schedule for school that they're also having open house that night. Is that true?
I don't know. But we did reserve a room there.
That'll be good, maybe we get some more people there.
Exactly.
If they're already there.
Exactly. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody. Thank you.